Hello, and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Dr. Rhonda Borowski, and joining me here in the Murrieta studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new team therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. His latest book, Feeling Great, contains powerful new techniques that make rapid recovery possible for many people struggling with depression and anxiety. Dr. Burns is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine.
Hello, Rhonda.
Hello. Good to see you both.
Good
Hi,
to
David.
see you. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, David. And wait, hang on. Hi, David. Hi, Matt. And welcome to our listeners.
Yeah.
This is the Feeling Good podcast, and it's episode 387. And today we again have our darling Matt May joining us. And we're going to do,
Rhonda.
We're doing our second episode on acceptance. And before I dive in, I'm going to read one little short endorsement. We were teasing everybody at the end of last week's podcast episode that we were going to talk about why people resist acceptance. So I'm going to keep you yearning for the answers to that a little longer. So someone wrote us about our podcast 381 and 382, which was the personal work that David, you and Jill did with Orly. And Reiko wrote, "This was an amazing podcast. My heart goes out to Orly. She really showed courage in describing all of the complex feelings that she was going through. Again, as always, David, you and Jill did amazing work. The processing of the brief mood survey was super, and Jill has such a soothing voice. There is a lot of learning here. So thank you so much, Dr. Burns, Jill, and Orly."
Well, thank you. Whoever wrote that's a beautiful note.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it, and appreciate Orly too, and bearing your soul and really making magic for a lot of people.
Yes, and David, I have an announcement to read.
Okay. By the way, your voice is nice and loud now, and when you were reading that Orly note, it was soft. So I don't know. Are you using the Logitech with the cameras, the cameras near your mouth, so we can get a video of your teeth?
Well, that leads me to the announcement.
Yeah. Okay.
Today, I have some incredibly exciting news to share that marks a new chapter for our Feeling Good podcast. Starting next week, we're taking our journey together to a whole new level by starting to record a video version of the Feeling Good podcast. That's right. Not only will you be able to listen to our conversations, but you'll also be able to see all the smiles and nods and frowns and funny faces, and of course, the laughter that happens behind the microphone. How are you going to do that? Well, we're branching out to YouTube and other platforms where videos are king and queen, bringing our message into your visual world. This is a step we've been really eager to take, and we can't wait to connect with you in this new dynamic way. We believe that seeing the faces behind the voices can deepen our connection and make our team therapy community even stronger. Plus, we're excited about the opportunity to add visual elements to our discussions, our interviews and stories, making the Feeling Good podcast experience even more engaging and interactive. So stay tuned for more information on where and how to find the video version of the podcast. We're so grateful for your continued support and enthusiasm for the Feeling Good podcast. Your stories, feedback, questions, and encouragement have been the driving force behind this new venture, and we're excited to embark on this new journey together. So we're looking forward to actually seeing you soon, not just in your ears, but on your screens. And until then, take care and have a listen to today's podcast on Acceptance Part 2.
Oh, well, thank you for that, Matt. I thought you were going to mention the impending release of the Feeling Great app. Which is coming out. Matt has the dates, but it'll be in the App Store in about a month.
Matt Pierce, not Matt May.
Matt Pierce. And so keep your eye open for it. You were saying something about that a few minutes ago, Matt May.
Yeah, I'm so excited for the release of the app. I think it's going to change the world in a way that we couldn't have done 20 years ago, and many people have tried to do. But I think you're the one who's actually making this dream a reality of making extremely effective therapy available at a reasonable cost. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. I just got a report this morning. We have and we're not calling it therapy. We're just calling it, a wellness thing. But we are doing one of our last beta tests pre-release, and we got data this morning on about 200 people. And there's two parts to the app. One is the AI, which has kind of been training it to do exactly what you do, Matt, and what you do, Rhonda, and what I do. It's like a little human, really. And then a lot of classes and lessons where I'm talking to the user and talking to you and bringing you through exercises to learn methods and concepts and techniques that can change your life. But we got feedback from 200 people so far on the current beta test, and they're experiencing something. I may be off, but what he said in the data I saw this morning was something like 80%. I think he said 85%, but 75 or 85% reduction in negative feelings in about an hour and a half with the app.
Wow.
So it's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's hard to believe, but it's real, and it's just the beginning too, because we get data now, even with the AI, every couple minutes, and we can see now for the first time exactly how much improvement does empathy create, exactly how much from positive reframing, all these things. It's like a detailed analysis of what works and what doesn't work, and what we have to change and what we have to improve. It's
a treasure trove of data.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, let's get on with this little mini treasure trove of data. I know, to introduce it, let me say that Freud spent his life, and psychoanalysts have spent their careers as well, dedicated to the concept of resistance, which some people have told me that's not a word for the general public. People don't know what it means, and I guess they don't. But what it means in a general way is that people, on the one hand, you want to change your life, you want to lose weight, or you want to get over your negative feelings and feeling happier and more joyful, or you want to get over your anxiety and your phobias. But human beings have a way of fighting against change, and that's called resistance, and it's very real. And you have some patients, if you're a shrink or a psychologist or whatever, who seem relatively eager for change, and you teach techniques, and they do their homework and they get better really quickly. And then you have other people who seem to do what we call resist and fight against the therapist, and kind of artfully forget to do their homework, and they yes but you and say, oh, I've tried that, or that won't work. And they put up a real battle. And one of the things that we try to do, and I think have succeeded in doing in team, is reducing resistance. And when you do that skillfully and effectively, then rapid and dramatic change is often just a stone's throw away. But the survey that I sent out was on acceptance and resistance. to find out. And last week we talked about what are the things that people can't accept about themselves from a list of 17 things. And we talked about those things. And today we're going to tell you why people resist. We had a list of 12 reasons, that people don't want to accept themselves. The non-acceptance is the same as resistance, and then to find out also. There's all this hullabaloo about acceptance, and is it just BS? Is it just hype? Or is it something that's really important? And so today we'll also bring you the results of we've measured. First of all, we have the world's first scale, I believe, that accurately measure resistance, and that's a scientific advance in and of itself. And then we have precise data on the impact of resistance and acceptance on negative and positive feelings using scales, new scales I've developed that have 96% reliability or accuracy on the negative feeling scale and 97% reliability or accuracy on the positive feeling scale. So we're going to, bring you a lot of, as the Buddha so often said 2,500 years ago, a lot of cool shit today, hopefully. With some nice, great stories from our beautiful and wonderful Rhonda and our handsome and wonderful Matt. And, we were supposed to get dates for you, Matt, because Matt has entered into the dating arena, being a divorcee, which sounds bad, but San Francisco Bay Area's most eligible bachelor, which sounds correct and good. And so if any of you ladies out there...
Poor Matt.
I'm glad we don't have the video this week because I'm beat red.
Matt, I'm responsible for a couple of marriages with my incredible... matchmaking skills.
I think I met one of the successful couples. They were lovely.
Yes.
All right.
Is that Amy?
Yeah.
Our Amy. Oh, yeah. She's so awesome.
Yeah. And her now husband, Randy.
Yeah. That warmed my heart for sure.
Okay.
I had one quick question actually back to the app is one of my supervisees, a very talented therapist, Zaina Halim, said she was helping out a little bit, doing some groups that went along with the app and was seeing pretty good data on those groups facilitating change and helping people. Is that likely to be a feature of the app going forward? And
it is, and we're also going to be exploring collaborations between therapists who want to use the app in their actual individual psychotherapy using Team. But Brandon Vance and Heather Clegg, who I think are going to be sponsoring Feeling Great app groups, just like they've done Feeling Great apps for my book. And they have about 100 people per group.
Wow.
And then they have small breakout groups. And it's only $12 a week. And they go for about 3 months. And people love those groups. And so that's going to be new. Zaina also did beautiful groups. Her charge was a little bit higher, $30 a week, and we're trying to keep it as low as possible.
Got it.
We're very much attracted, although the app is entirely automated. We're very attracted to the idea of having that human component. At the very least, to give people a sense of belonging, a community to join. We therapists have a Feeling Great community, but we're also wanting to develop that, and it is developing already for the general public, people who want to learn these tools.
Fantastic! I'm glad to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
And then at some point in the app, in today's app, I'm hoping we can talk about something that's an important puzzle. You see, at the beginning of this survey I did of 1,000 people on acceptance and resistance, at the beginning I asked 3 questions. If you're interested in learning to accept yourself, other people, in the world. And there was, as we talked about last week, about an 80% of people said, yeah, they definitely wanted to do that. But then when it came down to doing it, what are the specific things about yourself that you don't want to accept? And everybody had a ton of them. And then today, it comes down to, the intense resistance everyone has to accepting themselves. And one of the reasons, I believe, is that, see, acceptance, the promise of acceptance is joy, liberation, enlightenment, and prophets have been talking about that for hundreds of years, thousands of years. And it sounds great, but people always fight against it. And it's a real hard sell, acceptance. And we have a lot of tools in team, like the acceptance paradox and externalization of voices as a way to give people the experience and have them see it at an experiential level. But part of the reason, and one of the themes of all these resistance reasons, is that people have the idea that if they accept their flaws, something bad is going to happen. And that's why we fight against acceptance. And the bad things that they think are going to happen is I'm going to become an unhappy human being. I'm going to fail and be unmotivated. And so I'm going to have an unfulfilling, mediocre life. And I'm going to become a second-rate human being. And no one's going to love me and things of that nature. And all of these resistances just revolve around one sphere, you might say, that acceptance is a real bad deal. And accepting other people would be a bad deal, too. In fact, we need to identify people we don't get along with as enemies and kill them or argue with them or fight with them. And it's a bad deal to accept the world, too, because the world's terribly screwed up. And the deal here is that what I'm convinced is that acceptance is actually an invisible world that you have never seen. You think you know what it means, but you don't. And so when people think about acceptance, they think about some horrible thing. But you can take the same sentence, and then I'll shut up. But you could say, let's take the thought, I'm defective. And let's say you believe that 100%. And then the question is this reason for celebration or suicide? Because that's why a lot of people commit suicide. And that's the essence of depression, the feeling that you're not good enough, the belief that you're not good enough. But you can also celebrate when you discover and accept the fact that you're defective. Because, like, for example, if we want to have a party tonight or Friday, as we were planning, we could invite only the defective people, and then everyone would come, and we wouldn't have to try to impress each other. We could just be real and vulnerable and have a wonderful time of it. But that's the thing that I'm trying to solve intellectually. See, there's healthy acceptance where you feel joy, you feel close to others. Like Matt, when you talk about your flaws, or when you, Rhonda, talk about your flaws, which are many, too many, in fact. And when David talks about his flaws, that's actually a way to connect with real warmth and really get close to people. But when the general public, most people, shrinks included, think about accepting yourself, you think that that's something bad, and so what is the difference between healthy and unhealthy acceptance? They feel different, like Healthy acceptance is you die and go to heaven. You're suddenly your whole world changes in a great way. But what are the one key difference or the many key differences between healthy and unhealthy acceptance?
That's a great question, David. I have one thought about that, and I'd love to hear Rhonda's answer as well. The thought "I'm defective" could contain a hidden should statement, meaning that it could be saying I'm defective and I shouldn't be that way.
Oh, yeah. Right. I get it.
Whereas the reality is that I'm defective and that's precisely how I should be. I'm a human being, and all human beings are defective. There is no perfect human being.
Yeah, so it's actually the death of the self then is the key. That when you say I'm defective and I shouldn't be, you're hanging on to this view of yourself as this superior creature, and if you beat up on yourself enough, you'll eventually become that thing, and that if you have to accept yourself, that means a life of mediocrity. Because all these shoulds, you're thinking that's the only way I could really be happy and fulfilled. I should become a special person.
Exactly. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I also think it's almost like in the tone when we do externalization of voices, the tone of "oh, I'm defective" versus "oh, I'm defective." Mm-hmm. It's completely different, and I don't know how to explain that better. It's kind of the acceptance paradox, I guess.
Yeah. But the shoulds is a part of the answer to that. How is it we accept our mediocrity and feel joy? Do you remember the time in the car when we were driving home from downtown Los Altos, where we were eating pizza and talking about patience, and then in the car at a stop sign, you turned to me with these deep, meaningful eyes and said, "Dr. Burns, I want you to know every day I'm working hard to become a better person." You remember that?
I remember that, yeah.
And then I
remember exactly where we were.
Yeah, I do too. Some street, right, not too far from here. It was maybe up, when you loop around next to that Foothill Park thing up about a mile from here, somewhere in that range. And then you remember what I said?
Yeah, I've been trying to get you not to do that. Something like that.
Yeah, I said, Matt, I hope you get over that one of these days.
You.
And then you laughed and got your enlightenment. But what happened there?
Pulled me back down to earth there and helped me kind of let go of that fantasy of constant upward improvement or something like that.
Yeah, that we were going to become very special. So how do we let go of that? Well, I'll shut up because I'm probably just asking a nonsensical question anyway.
Can I take a stab at answering that question?
I'd rather you didn't. Matt, let's talk some.
Well,
yes, please do, Rhonda.
You described healthy acceptance is that you feel joy and close to to other people, and it's a way to connect, and it's a cause for celebration. And so would unhealthy acceptance be the opposite, that you're using acceptance to feel deflated and give up and withdraw from other people and accept resignation instead of joy and celebration?
Right. And I see the challenge is in therapy or in a podcast or in writing or in storytelling is how to get people to see the beautiful world that can happen when you accept yourself, because people don't believe in that world. They've never experienced it. And maybe we all get there somewhere differently. I've said so many times that my cat Obi has helped me, and all of our pets have helped me, because they're not special and they're not trying to be special. They just want to love and be loved and feel safe, and they're very vulnerable. They're not trying to impress anybody, and just to spend a few minutes with your cat and pet the cat, and the cat just loves you so much, and you love the cat so much, or the dog, or maybe a child. The that there's no impressing, going on. There's no a competition or trying to be better than, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, I like that explanation, David. And I've also heard you say that acceptance is very much related to love, and that love is something that cannot be earned, but can only be granted. And
Yeah.
And so when we grant ourselves love, we don't have to earn it. We're not attached to some better self or some high standard. We just let go of that. And that's sort of the death of the ego, letting go of this demand that we be better.
Yeah.
That's when we burst into joyful enlightenment.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Yeah, like the acceptance is like love. It's the act of self-love, the decision to love yourself instead of to beat up on yourself. So it's largely a decision, but you have to be able to see something in order to make that decision, and that's what Obi helped me see, actually, that here I am with Obi, and this is the most magnificent experience a human being could have, just being with Obi and remembering him now, and how much I loved him and still love him. And I talk to him a little bit every day, and that puts it on a different footing.
And he wasn't especially successful or
no
accomplished.
No, he was half dead, and he came to our kitchen door, and he knew he was on the verge of death because he'd been in a fight and he was injured, and his foot swelled up as big as his head, and he couldn't hunt. And we just he came and asked for help, and we kind of fell in love, and he had to learn to trust us. We had to learn to trust him. But anyway, let's get back to the survey here, or whatever you guys want to talk about.
Well, you listed 12. You have a 12 resistance scale item, and I'm not sure if we want to read all of them or the 5 most common, or the ones that are.
Yeah.
Those will be in the show notes. Yeah.
Yeah. They'll all be there in the show notes to look at. But here are the 5 most popular ones, and you want to read them, Rhonda?
Sure, let's do one at a time. So the first one is, if I accept my flaws and shortcomings, I'll lose all my motivation to learn.
Yeah.
And
that was
Matt, you were telling us before we started that you have a story about this particular.
Yeah, there's a great story about the founding of SeaWorld, where people realized, it's just joyful to see dolphins doing amazing tricks, and there would be a huge market for this. And so they wanted to train dolphins to do tricks. And the way they went about it is they hired traditional horse breakers to come in and use the tactics that they use on horses, which is punishment based. So if the dolphins weren't performing, there would be a little punishment or shock or something like that. And interestingly, the dolphins' response to that was that they just avoided the trainers and just would hang out on the bottom of the tanks and went into what looked like a kind of depression. They wouldn't interact and kind of stopped eating. And they realized this isn't working at all. And they brought in a new crew of people who were trained in operant conditioning. where you give small rewards for behavior that approximates what you want the dolphin to be doing. So if they swim a little closer to the surface of the water, then they would get a little beep that would signal that they've earned a reward and will get a fish soon. And then if you keep just shaping the behavior over time through positive feedback, positive conditioning, then pretty soon the dolphins were doing all these amazing things. But the original dolphins had to be released. They didn't trust human beings after that. So it was sort of a sad lesson. And
so sad thinking about them, they would have been so loving and grateful to get little rewards and have fun interacting with humans.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I love that.
And I think that's been shown in multiple different studies that positive reinforcement is sustainable over the long period of time. And so you can see tremendous learning just using positive reinforcement. I do that with my kids. Like if they get their shoes a little bit closer to the shoe bin, I give them a lot of praise and for something that's approximating what I ultimately want.
Yeah. Yeah. We do that on the podcast too, kind of reinforce each other's laughter and positivity, and I think that gets infectious with some of our podcast listeners. And it's just so odd how there's this nasty part of human behavior and this loving part of human behavior, and it's just so easy to act nasty to somebody you're upset with, and then that turns into conflict and defensiveness, and that when you it's okay to point out when somebody's doing something that you want them to change. You can do it in a calm and loving way, and you can also reinforce people by talking in a positive way to them, and just say, I just love it when you do this or when you do that, or great point that you just made, and people really warm up to that. We all do. We love having someone say something positive to us, and it's a powerful motivator.
So what you're saying, Matt, is and David, so if you accept your flaws and shortcomings, it's like the horse trainers shocking the dolphin. It's punishment. You're punishing yourself because you're not accepting yourself. So you're constantly punishing yourself.
Yeah.
But when you get to the place,
beating up on yourself, I shouldn't be so screwed up, and all the things we talked about that people beat up on themselves last week.
Right. So if you get to the place where you're rewarding yourself, then that's the reward is continuing to give you the motivation. You don't need to beat up on yourself if you can still be kind to yourself and have motivation to learn.
Yeah. When I'm beating up on myself, I just get confused and demoralized. But when I'm with you guys and we're kind of having fun together, that's when all the creativity comes and all the productivity and a lot more gets done in my world, when I'm feeling happy.
Yeah.
And when I'm feeling insecure or hurt or put down or something like that.
Yeah. That's such a great example in the animal world, bringing it into the human world.
Yeah, the two different forms of motivation, the carrot and the whip.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people get the humor in the saying the floggings or the whippings will continue until morale improves. That's obviously a ridiculous statement.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And interestingly, we just have very high standards. Like we might not whip someone else, but we'll oftentimes kind of verbally whip ourselves due to something you've taught me about, David, the double standard.
Yeah.
And I was going to say one other thing about Kim Bullock taught me about acceptance. You and she were uh, working together one day, and she had a negative thought that she was defective because she had negative emotions. And she was a therapist and she wasn't supposed to feel this way.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And when
she
yeah,
was saying that, I didn't have a happy childhood, so I'm kind of defective. I remember that
yeah.
night.
And then she learned that those feelings were like her superpower as a therapist, that knowing what it was really like to feel depressed and down and discouraged and upset, that was what was making it possible for her to connect so wonderfully as she always has with her patients. She's a brilliant therapist.
Nice.
Yeah, that's neat. I love that. What's another thing on the list here of reasons that we have for resisting accepting ourselves?
Well, the next one that was endorsed very popularly was, it would be tremendously painful to accept my flaws and shortcomings. That would be like giving up and having to live with a heavy load of inadequacies.
Yeah.
Now, I have a little story about that.
Okay, go for it.
I want to hear.
You're so sweet. I'm working with a really great young man who's very shy. He's tremendously shy. It's actually in some ways debilitating his life. And he is a really great therapy client, does his homework, and he reads the books and listens to the podcasts. And he's come to a place of really understanding acceptance. And he has accepted that he's a shy person, just like he accepts that he has blonde hair or blue eyes, and that it's okay to be shy. That doesn't necessarily mean he won't continue to work to overcome it and to build relationships, but it's, instead of beating himself up, he's got to a place of, well, this is of accepting that this is a quality that he has, maybe not forever, but for in this moment right now. And then that's okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I was saying earlier that that's like what I would say first level acceptance. And then you can go to a higher level where he wouldn't have to work on changing it. That he would discover that his shyness is never a negative or a problem. The only problem is the self-condemnation, the shame, and that shyness without shame is actually an asset that makes you more appealing to other people. It's the attempt to hide it that creates awkwardness for everybody. I don't know if that makes sense.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
I think that's mind blowing. The problem isn't being shy; it's being ashamed.
Yeah,
of the shyness. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Shame, not shyness, is the problem.
Yeah. I think one thing you've been asking is like how
that movie star was Tom Selleck. Is that?
Oh, Tom Selleck. Yeah.
I think he
played Magnum.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but there was some Tom who was a movie star who was shy, but he's like this dashingly handsome guy, kind of like you, Matt. And,
okay, I'm beat red again.
Yeah. The shyness actually made him more attractive because it made him vulnerable and accessible.
Right.
So, yeah.
All right. How about another one? Life has many real disappointments and losses. I don't want to feel happy and chipper by accepting all of those negatives when the world is falling apart all around me. That just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that was very, very popular. A lot of people endorse that as a reason not to accept themselves and the world. Now, can we help explain this to people?
Yeah.
See, what I mean is people don't understand what we mean by acceptance. Do you see what I mean? They think it means one thing. We're looking at something different. And the way I compare this is like, although lived for high school years in Arizona. For whatever reason, in Phoenix, I had never seen the Grand Canyon. And so one summer when I was in college, one of my college classmates and I were going to drive from Phoenix back to Chicago, where he lived, and then to Amherst, where we were going to college. And the first night we drove from Phoenix to the edge of the Grand Canyon, but it was dark, and we couldn't afford to, rent a room in the tourist area. So we just pulled the car over to the side of the road, and it was dark. And so we just pulled out our sleeping bags and threw them there on the ground and went to sleep. And then we didn't quite realize where we had thrown our sleeping bags down, but we were actually right on the very edge of the Grand Canyon.
Holy moly.
And when I woke up, the sun was just coming up over the Grand Canyon. And I opened my eyes and I realized I was 6 inches from the edge of a cliff. But I saw the Grand Canyon for the first time, and it took my breath away. And I told myself, well, I heard there was a big hole in the ground, but I had no idea it was like this. And it was a moment I'll never forget in my whole life. And that's what healthy acceptance is. The first time you learn to accept yourself or other people or the world, it's like that. You see something you hadn't seen before.
Mm.
And so this person who thinks it wouldn't make sense, I guess, to the world is falling apart all around us. That's for sure. We in the United States, we've got horrible things going on, political battles, Palestine, Israel, Hamas, horrible killings going on both sides, the Ukraine situation. So how are we supposed to be happy and chipper when living in such a horrible world? So that's a powerful resistance reason. But there's a tremendous explanation to this, and Matt or Rhonda will now provide it.
Well, pass on to you, Matt.
I do have a couple things to say. So so this is on the last one, on number 4.
This is on number 5.
Oh yeah, let me talk about that one first. So one person who was asked that same question that you just posed, David, was the Dalai Lama, because his people in Tibet were being persecuted, and they asked him how can he be happy given the terrible way that his people are being tortured and forced to have abortions or to be sterilized and their land taken from them. And he said, well, they can take our land and our health, our lives, our families, but I'm not going to let them take my happiness too.
Mm.
Yeah, that is cool. That is cool. And that helps. That's neat. And again, it takes a really wise person to come up with things that will help people see what is previously invisible. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah, I think he's stating there that that's a choice. Our happiness comes from within.
And
that's also this kind of Stoic belief that it's not, the rain that's bothering us, but our interpretation of the rain.
Yeah, right. And we're not saying to be happy about the killings. I'm making this video with Mark from the Tuesday group, and he experiences, I think I mentioned this earlier, I can't remember, I'm so half demented, and I accept that too, much to the chagrin of my colleagues. But he experienced, we did a video, and we'll have it available soon for people to watch, but he became enlightened during the session, and it's on video, and he starts crying uncontrollably, sobbing, just wretched sobbing, thinking of the people in Palestine, the people in Israel, people in Ukraine, and he's just totally demolished with sadness over the tragedies that he's seen. But then but the reason he came for the session was because he had lost his ability to feel things.
Oh, wow.
Because of a traumatic event when he was a young man in Iran, and he was put in front of a firing squad and shot 5 times and barely survived. And it was like a PTSD type of thing. And then during the session, he suddenly, and again, it was just by challenging distorted thoughts and suddenly seeing how he'd been beating up on himself for 45 years because he was trying to get to the hospital to save a woman's life, but they were on martial law. And they said, anyone who's outside will be shot. And he tried to get to the hospital anyway. And he was put in front of a firing squad and shot. But then they changed their minds and tried to save him, and they took him to the hospital, and there was no one there because it was martial law, so he had to get a cleaning lady to help him give himself an intravenous fluid so he wouldn't go into shock. Wow. Until the sun came up, and then the doctors and surgeons came in and they operated on him and saved his life. But his feelings came back during the session. And he suddenly realized, my God, I can feel the suffering for those people. And then he said, oh, I'm normal. I can feel things. And he became euphoric. And you see that also, and began laughing, said, now I know, I'm whole. I'm a human being. I can love, I can feel. And it's the most beautiful example of having true feelings for the tragedies going on in the world. And I think if the rest of us were open, he suddenly woke up. And I think we'd be sobbing every day. But his capacity to respond to the suffering in the world made him euphoric. So that's that paradox again. Mm-hmm. I think the capacity to respond with tears to the suffering of other people is perhaps one of the highest, if not the highest, experiences a human being can have, and that is a form of enlightenment, and perhaps the highest form of enlightenment.
Mm-hmm. I'm getting chills.
Beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah.
You guys are so awesome.
To you.
So grateful.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, here's the next one. Ready, David?
Yeah.
I'm never going to accept myself as just another average or below average person. That would be awful.
Yeah. And I can remember once I was dropping Jill Levitt off at her house. We'd been to some function at Stanford or something like that. And as I drove her into the driveway, she just turned to me and we were talking about perfectionism or something. And she said, I feel so sorry for those people who can't accept themselves as just below average shits. and I thought that was great. That was really, really helpful to me. And there's a kind of see, you know why I can't accept myself as just another average person?
Why?
Because I'm looking up at average from way down below these days. So if I was average, I'd be rejoicing for all the progress I'd made. I can, barely walk for two miles with frequent rests because I have low back pain. And I used to be able to do 12 miles of jogging. So I'm just grateful to be below average. That probably sounds two-faced or stupid or something, but like to be with other people who are flawed and willing to admit it and to be open and vulnerable. And again, our cats, they look up with eyes. Please, Daddy, would you take a minute or two and just sit down and pet me for a little while? And they're so trusting and so loving. But you know, half of everything about us is below average. Mm-hmm. Because average is just the halfway point. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we're bags of below averageness with a little bit of above averageness here and there. But there's some really cool things to say about this one. And so Rhonda and our Matt will now say some cool things about it.
I'm just going to quote some cool things that you've said in the past, David. I really like it when you will say, you know, the water is actually warm. That, you know, it seems like it would be this awful, terrible thing to accept myself as just another average or below average person, but to realize that's an illusion. That in fact, it's just a wonderful experience to accept ourselves as another average or below average person. That it feels so good. It just seems like it's going to be freezing cold or something like that until you've jumped in. And then it feels amazing, but it's just hard to imagine that could be true from the side of, you know, when we're rejecting ourselves.
Yeah, right.
Seems like magic.
Again,
like I'm gonna, like in that previous one, a heavy load of inadequacies. I don't want to accept myself because that would be giving up and having to live with a heavy load of inadequacies. The vision that came into my head was something like, it's actually what happens is that those heavy loads of inadequacies become like your helium balloons that are lifting you up into the sky. And it just seems like a reversal of physics, that these aren't heavy loads. They're precisely what makes me human, what I need. And
yeah.
Well, you know, I had an experience with someone with the opposite, who, you know, it was a new patient, and when it came time pretty quickly early on to pull out the daily mood log, and he said, "Do you use this with everyone?" Because he had been referred to me by another patient who was really happy with the work. And he said, you know, my friend told me that you use this form. Is this the form you use with my friend? And I said, yes. And yes, I do use it with everyone. And he said, well, you know, I kind of think of myself as really special, and I want you to use a special form just with me. I don't want a form that you use with everyone.
Yeah.
And actually, I was a little dumbfounded. I didn't know what to say, and said, actually, I can't remember what I said, but I'm sure I failed with him, because since I couldn't come up with a new form that was special only to him, he decided not to continue in therapy with me. And I can just visualize him kind of continuing on with his suffering.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's cool, Rhonda. I love that.
I mean, it takes a lot. What you guys have described, it just takes the pressure off. Like you said, that helium balloon. I mean, how much less pressure can you feel if you're being lifted into the sky by a helium balloon?
Yeah,
buoyant.
Right. Yeah.
Wonderful flaws all around me.
Yeah.
Yeah. That fellow actually ended up coming to me, and he said the same thing. And I say, "Oh, that is so cool that you're special. You're one cut above other people." And I usually just treat people for free because they're so below average. But this is good news for me, because I have a tremendously high fee for people who are special. And so I hope you never give it up, because you'll be putting a lot of money in my pocket. That was not true, but it
I
wasn't
wish
even
it
particularly.
was.
It was kind of below average too.
Well,
Let's see what.
here's a
Yeah.
really hard one. I'm
Mhm.
curious what
Oh
you guys are going
yeah.
to say about this. It's challenging. Acceptance is fine and easy for people who've enjoyed tremendous success, but it's really hard if you're struggling to pay the bills or you feel like you really haven't succeeded at much.
Okay. Now I'm going to go on to a second part of my research because it relates to what you just said, and I looked at all these resistance items and saw how they were affected by age, by gender, male versus female, by sexual orientation, like heterosexual versus LGBTQ, or white versus non-white, and also by income and education. And who there was I have to get the result up on my computer. So I think you guys have it. But there were two groups who deviated greatly from everyone else in how much they endorsed that item. And who do you think it was? Of course, you can read the answer.
No, I haven't read the answer.
Okay, so what? There were two groups that were radically less likely to endorse that item, and there were two groups who were very different from others and didn't believe that was to be true. And if you don't know the answer, you see there you could guess it was based on age, like maybe older or younger people. It was based on gender, that's men or women. It was based on heterosexual or white, racial, or income or education. And to give you
and gender
hint,
and gender. Did you say gender?
Yeah. Gender was one there that you could guess.
Can I take a guess?
Yeah.
Because these are all Americans too. This is was it all Americans or no?
No, but I have people from all over the world, but I didn't ask them where they were from. But they would be mainly Americans more than any other location.
Was it white men that endorsed that, or was that popular? Because it feels like there's so much pressure for white men to succeed at a certain level.
Yeah, that's a great guess and a very clever guess. And
a wrong guess.
Yeah, it's wrong. White did not have anything to do with that item 12. Okay, now it's Matt's chance to guess. We got five categories left. And
I think I'm cheating because I'm looking at the data.
Oh, well, don't do it. We'll let Rhonda keep guessing. What any other guesses? You can guess heterosexual, age,
younger people,
income. Yeah, so
younger people.
Look, age. Let's look at age. On item 12.
So younger people and people that have a low income.
Okay, but let's do one at a time because I'm elderly and my brain can only figure out one thing at a time.
Okay.
Age was negatively associated with that. So it's the opposite of what you said.
Huh.
As people got older, they became significantly less likely to endorse that item. And that was statistically significant. You've heard of like P is less than 0.05?
Yes.
This is like P is less than 40 zeros and a 1.
Wow.
Or something like that. My thing will only go up to 12 zeros, and it was still 0 at the 12th decimal point. So that you got that one the opposite there. the older people are less likely to endorse that. Okay, so now do you want to guess some of the other categories? We've said that gender. You guessed gender, right?
Yes.
Oh, you didn't guess
no,
men
I did.
and women.
I thought men would endorse that more. And
yeah, but it was negative. Men and women were the same on that one. Mm-hmm. Okay, now what other guesses do you have? How about we've got heterosexual, income, and education.
Yes, so a heterosexual will endorse that more popularly. Heterosexuals endorse 12.
No. Heterosexual or LGBTQ were exactly the same on that item. So you only have two categories. Isn't it interesting how unexpected these things can be? Mm-hmm. You have two categories: education and income. Would they have an effect, either of those, and if so, in what direction? So people who make less, I'm guessing people who make less income, they will endorse this thought. Fantastic. It's the exact opposite. Oh, really? Yeah. Those with the higher your income, the more you endorse this. And that seems counterintuitive to me. It doesn't to me, but I'll tell you in a minute why. And how about education? So the more education you have, the more you endorse this thought. That's what you guess? Yes. Are you sure? Yes. You're right. Yes, finally. Yeah. And do you see, I think what's going on there is that this is kind of like a dig that people have on acceptance and resistance. Oh, that's easy for people who are rich and famous, but people who are richer or higher, on that socioeconomic status with a doctoral degree, they're much less likely to endorse this item because they suffer just like everybody. And so they know it's not true. It's not easy for the rich and famous to accept themselves. And we see that in the news all the time, people like movie stars who commit suicide, and rich and famous people who in their lives who die by suicide, I think is the politically correct way to say it, which is very, very sad. But that was my interpretation of the data, which I thought was kind of interesting. Now, the last thing that I want to mention, and I found this to be a really fascinating podcast, thanks to you folks and your wonderful contributions, but what did the data show? Now, what's the bottom line? How do resistance and acceptance affect our feelings, or do they at all? Because there's been all these gurus currently, and gurus who are alive now, and prophets from many centuries, claiming that acceptance, and I would call it healthy acceptance, is associated with a boost in how you feel. And is that true? And the way I looked at that is, and you saw, and they'll see it in the show notes, I put, I did sophisticated mathematical modeling of the data using what's called structural equation models. And that's something that you can go a step beyond correlational analyses and actually measure causal effects and test for the presence of causal effects. But what the statistical models suggested was that resistance causes non-acceptance. And that is intuitively obvious because these are all reasons not to accept yourself. And so the resistance scale, I have the exact numbers here. in the report, but I'd have to put my glasses back on. But it was something like resistance. Well, let me put my glasses on, see if I can see it here on the diagram. Oh, I can't see, but it causes something like half of the variance in the non-acceptance scale. Or to put it differently, the more you resist, the more you're not going to be willing to accept yourself. And that non-acceptance scale, or its opposite, acceptance, does have massive effects on negative and positive feelings. And just to say the approximate thing, I would say that acceptance can cause up to 40 to 50% reduction in negative feelings and boost in positive feelings of joy and happiness and self-esteem. And that's using these highly precise new scales for negative and positive feelings. Mm-hmm. The data, I was also trying to find out why single people tend to be more depressed and less happy, and if income, if money can buy happiness, and I was able to measure those causal effects, and it's true that money can buy happiness, but you'd have to have your income go from less than $25,000 a year, which was the lowest point on my scale, to over $200,000 a year, just to get a few percent boost in happiness or reduction in negative feelings. And acceptance is like 10 times more powerful than hundred thousands of dollars of income increase. And you can get it right away, and it's totally free of charge. Mm-hmm. And I just thought that was kind of neat. And in addition, half of the effects of income on negative and positive feelings are mediated through resistance and acceptance, because the people with the higher incomes were having higher acceptance of themselves and less resistance to accepting themselves. And it was a little the same with single people. We think that single people are unhappy because they don't have a loving partner, and there was some truth to that. They were higher than anyone on the loneliness scale, and higher than anyone on the unloved. They had lower scores on feeling loved and cared about than others in the survey, and higher scores on the loneliness item in the feelings scale. But once again, the direct effect of singleness on positive and negative feelings was mostly mediated through acceptance and resistance. The singles were less likely to accept themselves, less likely to accept other people. They had much higher scores on resistance and much higher scores on non-acceptance, and that was accounting for most, if not all, of their unhappiness. And so the survey, it's reading between the lines a little bit, but suggested that the problem with singles who are depressed or unhappy is not the lack of someone else who loves them, but their lack of self-love, as well as their love for other people, and their diminished willingness to accept others, I thought might be a kind of a sad wound, maybe from previous rejections. So now they're wary and putting up a wall so they don't get vulnerable and then get hurt and rejected again. But I'm just speculating, but it was the case that they were much less interested in accepting other people than the people who were in other relationship categories.
Maybe on that last point, once again, it's not the loneliness or being alone that's the problem as much as thinking I shouldn't be.
Yeah.
alone and feeling lonely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rejecting that state.
Yeah. As well as the love addiction, the belief that I can't feel totally happy and fulfilled without a loving partner. And I get beaten up on because of my position on that quite a bit, because some people, when they hear that you can be happy when you're alone and fulfilled when you're alone, they get angry. They don't like hearing that because it's not what their belief system is. But this is perhaps some of the first data that kind of proves the point. And I also published an article in the top psychology journal for research, for clinical research, Journal of Consulting and Clinical Psychology. It was called Intimacy and Depression. Is there a causal connection? And I did a longitudinal study of relationship satisfaction, how close you feel to other people, and how depressed you are. And they were significantly correlated at the start of the study. When they came to my clinic in Philadelphia, this was a study of about 400 or 500 people, and they were significantly correlated at the 12-week evaluation. But again, we used structural equation models to show that there were no causal connections between them. Depression did not cause problems in relationships, and problems in relationships did not cause depression. The data said that these both have an unknown common cause, but they don't influence each other. In other words, the data showed that problems in intimate relationships were not a cause of depression.
Mm-hmm.
And also that depression is not a cause of problems in intimate relationships.
And David, you taught me that at a deep level. You made me do or you invited me to do pleasure prediction when I was single, and because I was thinking I couldn't have any fun or enjoy myself if I didn't have someone in my life to share my experiences with. And I just would make predictions. You said, well, what would be some fun things that you would want to experience with someone else? And I said, I just love to go to the movies and enjoy watching a movie. And you asked me how much I predicted I would enjoy that. And I said, -50. It'll be really shameful to walk into a movie theater all by myself. And you assigned me the homework of doing that and reporting back on how much I actually enjoyed it. And that I had to sit in the middle of the theater to confront my shame and social anxiety. And I did, and I ended up having 100% enjoyment of that experience, much to my surprise, and it liberated me. It blew apart that idea that I needed to have someone else there to have a great time.
Yeah, that is so neat. Thank you, Matt, for that. Thank both of you for being yourselves today. It's been, I was a little afraid of this because I was afraid it would seem too much like data and turn everyone off. And perhaps it will, but I thought it was just a wonderful hour or whatever that we've spent here babbling away.
It's one of my favorite things to do, just to babble away with both of you.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Well, as we're ending today, I just want to remind everyone that, or if you came in late, that next week we're starting this new chapter for our podcast of having a video version as well as the audio version of the Feeling Good podcast. And it'll be on YouTube and other channels, and we'll let you know next week where they are.
Yeah, and if you're interested in getting announcements as the release of the Feeling Great approaches, you can go to I think the Feeling Great website. It might be available for you to sign up there, or you could go to my website, feelinggood.com, and there's a thing for the Feeling Great app that will direct you to where you can sign up to be a beta tester to get announcements as the commercial release of the app happens. And as it's currently planned, you'll be able to take a week ride on the app for free to see if you like it. And since it only seems to take about 2 hours for an awful lot of people to get a tremendous mood boost from our little bot and some of the classes and lessons in the app, you might be able to do yourself a lot of good from that free week. And then if you like it, you might want to sign up for a year's subscription. And if you can't afford it, then you just tell us that you'd like to have it for free, and that's what we're going to do. So that's the update on that. And thank you all for listening, and keep sending us your great questions and tell us what you think about our show. And we love you all.
Yeah, exactly. Couldn't have said it better, David. Love to all of you.
Yes. Thank you.
We're laughing because you thought we were done. But sometimes when we turn off the recorder, then something good comes out. And Matt we just said something. I said, let's turn on the recording again so people can hear his really cool point.
Okay. Well, let's see if I can make that point the way I just did before. It was that there are two paths to feeling accepting and liking oneself. And one, the harder path, and you pointed out in the case of like wealth or earning, that it's pretty hard to increase your income from $15,000 up to $200,000 a year and see
more than 200
to get that very small impact on feelings of positive self-esteem. And so I was thinking, well, that sounds like the high road to acceptance, where you get the thing that you imagine that you need or you're attached to having, and then you accept yourself.
Like, I must have success. I must have a loving partner. I must have this. I must have that. All these needs we think we must. I need love. I need success. I need X, Y, and Z to feel happy and fulfilled.
And what you're saying is that there's another road. It's a shortcut. It's the low road. It's easier. You can just accept yourself and let go of the demands and the attachment to getting all that stuff. And that's when you feel better in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And all it involves is lowering your standards down to zero. That's what I've done. and so everything looks good to me. If I can even make it a mile on my own with a few rest stops, I say, man, this is better than McDonald's French fries. Everyone's speeding past me, but I'm just grateful that I can be out there and do something.
That is awesome. I love that philosophy. Awesome. Yeah.
So.
Okay, well, bye again.
Yeah, bye again. We'll be back in a couple of minutes, so don't
we'll be right back.
Your thing off. We'll be back giggling about some other thing. But anyway, bye, everybody. We still love you, although not as much.
This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes under the podcast page. You will also find archives of previous episodes and many resources for therapists and non-therapists. We welcome your comments and questions. If you want to support the show, please share the podcast with people who might benefit from it. You could also go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. I am your host, Rhonda Borowski, the director of the Feeling Great Therapy Center. We hope you enjoyed this episode. I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.